there was something that they could do that might open up a door to a parallel universe, you don't think they would do it?
At 13, Max Loughan, once hailed as the world's smartest kid, claimed that CERN's Quantum AI had done the unthinkable. It had opened a portal.
There is an infinite number of parallel realities with an infinite number of parallel dimensions that actually can create a powerful or a less powerful form of God.
The world laughed at first. Physicists dismissed it. Skeptics called him a child chasing ghosts.
A whiz kid with a very powerful idea.
This wire takes the energy from the air. Down below here, we turn it from AC into DC.
But then Joe Rogan called it the most terrifying possibility in modern science.
Infinite parallel universes. So what the kid winds up with is this theory of like one atom weighing too much.
Because if Max is right, the world's largest machine didn't just test the limits of physics, it may have crossed them.
CERN just cranked the Large Hadron Collider up to a new record, smashing protons together with higher energy than ever before. And some wonder if these collisions could be bending reality itself.
The shockwave, when a teen prodigy claimed CERN tore reality open. It began with a claim that sounded impossible. Max Loughan said that CERN, the European research center famous for studying the origins of the universe, had used a new form of quantum AI to open a portal to another dimension. According to him, this technology had done something far beyond scientific limits. He did not mean it as a metaphor. He meant a real gateway, a tear in the fabric of reality itself. The first clip showing his words appeared online late one evening. Within minutes, it began spreading across social media platforms. Short 30-second edits filled feeds and were captioned with questions like, "Has science gone too far?" Or, "Did CERN open a door it cannot close?" Reports claimed the clip crossed hundreds of thousands of views before midnight. Some users added glowing rings of light to their posts and called them proof. None of these images were confirmed, but by then, the story had a life of its own. People were hooked, and the name Max Loughan started trending in multiple countries overnight. By the next morning, the claim had reached podcasts, discussion panels, and reaction channels. Hosts played the short clips on air, pausing every few seconds to debate what they were hearing. Some said it sounded like a wild rumor. Others said it was too specific to ignore. They speculated on what kind of experiment could cause such a result. As listeners sent in questions, the topic began to move beyond curiosity. It started to sound like concern. The reaction across the internet was divided. One group dismissed it entirely and said it was an attention-seeking stunt. They pointed to past viral hoaxes and said this was just another internet fantasy. They demanded data, official statements, and scientific proof. The other group felt differently. They believed that major discoveries often sound impossible at first. They said the claim could be true, but suppressed. Between these two sides grew a long thread of fear and fascination. Ordinary viewers expressed their unease in simple words. "If a portal opened, what came through?" one asked in a comment. "If it closed, what stayed behind?" another wrote. These questions echoed everywhere, blending curiosity with worry. By the end of the first day, the topic sat in a strange balance. On one side were questions and requests for proof. On the other side were belief and curiosity. Both sides agreed on one thing. They needed to know who had made the claim and why anyone should listen. Before anyone could decide if this was science or storytelling, the next step was simple. Who exactly is Max Loughan, and why did his words spread so fast? The boy who outran ordinary science. Max Loughan's journey from genius to rebel. Before his claim about CERN, Max Loughan had already captured the world's attention years earlier. When he was just 13, he appeared on television claiming to have built a machine that could pull free energy from the atmosphere. The device, which he called an electromagnetic harvester, was a small homemade generator assembled from items found around his house: coffee cans, insulated copper wire, LED lights, an old radio antenna, and a metal spoon that acted as a conductor. It worked by drawing static electricity from the air and converting it into a small current strong enough to power a light bulb. In demonstrations, Max connected the wires to his improvised circuit and lit up a few LEDs, explaining with remarkable confidence that the Earth itself was surrounded by electromagnetic energy waiting to be tapped. He compared it to catching invisible lightning or drawing electricity from the atmosphere. Max said his goal was to create a device that anyone could build, one that could give power to the world without fuel or pollution. The concept was daring, and it spoke to something people wanted to believe: that maybe one brilliant child could change the future of energy. The moment his story aired, it spread rapidly. Viewers were struck by the boy's confidence and how easily he discussed subjects that most adults struggled to explain. In interviews, he spoke about science and energy with a calm assurance that made him sound far older than his years. He said his goal was not fame or money, but to help people and improve the planet. His words made people pause. Teachers replayed his videos in classrooms. Parents shared them with their children as proof that imagination and courage mattered more than age or degrees. He became a symbol of what curiosity could achieve when it was not limited by fear. When professionals later examined Max's invention, they found that it wasn't actually producing new energy. It was collecting small amounts of existing electromagnetic energy already present in the environment. The device worked more like an energy harvester than a generator. By using the metal components, wires, and coils, it captured stray radio waves and static electricity from nearby sources, such as Wi-Fi routers, radio towers, and power lines, then converted them into a weak electric current. Still, that technical correction did little to dull the fascination surrounding him. People were not inspired by the machine's function, but by the spirit behind it. He seemed fearless in the way he faced the unknown. Commenters online often wrote that he reminded them of a young Nikola Tesla, the brilliant inventor who once dreamed of transmitting limitless energy through the air and lighting up the world without wires. Like Tesla, Max seemed driven not by profit or recognition, but by an unshakable belief that science could free humanity from its limits. But as Max grew older, his focus began to change. He started reading about consciousness, quantum fields, and theories that questioned the nature of reality. Around his early teens, clips surfaced of him talking about whether thoughts could influence energy or if matter and mind were somehow connected. According to viewers who followed him closely, his interests were expanding beyond engineering into questions that mixed science, philosophy, and speculation. Some believed he was losing focus, drifting away from practical experiments. Others saw him as a young thinker moving into deeper territory that traditional science avoided. As time passed, his tone shifted. He was no longer the smiling boy with goggles and wires. He started speaking more seriously about the direction of modern science. He said technology was advancing faster than understanding, and that some discoveries might reach places humanity was not ready to explore. He warned that the line between progress and danger was thinner than people believed. When Max made his latest claim about CERN's Quantum AI, it felt like the natural evolution of everything he had been hinting at for years. The same child who once dreamed of powering homes now spoke about the forces that power existence itself. He described CERN not as a laboratory, but as a threshold. a place where science had begun to look too far beyond the visible world. In his words, it was humanity's most dangerous key, a machine built to unlock creation itself. So what exactly goes on in CERN's vast tunnels beneath Europe? Beneath the surface, what CERN is doing, and how quantum AI entered the story. Far beneath the peaceful hills along the French-Swiss border lies one of the most secretive and powerful machines ever built. Most people driving past it would never guess what rests below. It is called the Large Hadron Collider, part of CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research. The collider is a massive underground ring stretching 27 kilometers in a perfect circle. Inside that ring, invisible to the naked eye, scientists send tiny particles called protons speeding around at nearly the speed of light. When these protons crash into each other, the impact recreates conditions that existed just after the birth of the universe, the moment known as the Big Bang. Each collision releases energy and fragments of matter that reveal what the universe was made of in its first seconds of existence. This is how scientists discovered the famous Higgs boson, the so-called God particle, which explained how matter gains mass. To physicists, this was one of the greatest discoveries of modern times. To everyone else, it sounded like magic. But as the machine became more powerful, so did the unease surrounding it. The collider runs on an unimaginable scale. Its magnets must be kept colder than outer space, and its electrical systems generate enough power to light up entire cities. Each time it is upgraded, it reaches new energy levels that no one has ever tested before. Scientists say it is safe, but the public often asks a question that science cannot fully answer. What if something goes wrong at a level we do not yet understand? During each run, the collider produces an ocean of data, more than any human could ever study in a lifetime. To manage this, CERN depends on artificial intelligence. These AI systems sort through trillions of particle collisions, searching for strange patterns or signals that could mean something new has been discovered. Over time, according to several reports, CERN's team began experimenting with even faster computing tools, including early versions of quantum algorithms. So when talk about CERN's experiments started spreading online, people began forming their own theories. Rumors appeared everywhere, each one trying to explain what the scientists were really doing and what might have gone wrong. The rumor that refused to die, CERN's portal, and the birth of modern myth. Long before Max Loughan made his claim, the internet had already turned CERN into a symbol of mystery and fear. Years earlier, a satirical article appeared online saying that scientists at the collider had accidentally opened a gateway to another world. It was meant as humor, a parody of science fiction. But as it spread, the joke lost its label. People shared it without reading the fine print, and within hours, the story was being quoted as fact. Soon, YouTube channels began adding fuel. They combined real CERN footage with slow, dramatic music and talk of energy spikes deep underground. Some reused unrelated clips of storms or strange clouds, claiming they were filmed above Geneva. A few even said witnesses had seen rings of light or felt tremors when the collider was active. None of these claims were ever verified, but that didn't matter. The story was too interesting to ignore. As it spread, the details changed. One version said CERN's scientists had torn a hole in space. Another said they had opened a door to the other side. Others claimed the collider was a cover for secret experiments, hinting at connections with shadowy organizations or ancient symbols found near the site. Each retelling became darker, stranger, and further from reality. The common thread was always the same, that CERN had gone too far and touched something humanity wasn't meant to touch. Physicists tried to explain the truth. They said the collider's purpose was to study how matter behaves, not to summon anything or anyone. They said the flashes of light people saw were reflections, not evidence of a rift in reality. But by then, few people wanted reassurance. They wanted mystery. CERN was no longer just a laboratory in their minds. It was a modern Tower of Babel, a machine daring to climb into the heavens. Over time, the rumor hardened into legend. Each time CERN powered up, the same questions returned. What if they are trying again? What if something slipped through last time? When the lab announced upgrades, online forums exploded with warnings that the next run might be the one. Some said the collider was strong enough to create a black hole. Others spoke of magnetic surges, or missing data, or secret experiments happening when the world was asleep. So, when Max Loughan finally mentioned a portal opened by CERN's Quantum AI, the internet was ready to believe. For many, his claim didn't sound new. It sounded like confirmation. People remembered the old stories and connected them to his words. Suddenly, it felt as if a prophecy had been fulfilled. Comment sections filled with excitement and fear. Supporters said Max had finally exposed the truth scientists had been hiding for years. Others accused him of fueling panic, but no one could ignore him. On forums and podcasts, new theories appeared overnight. Some speculated that CERN didn't mean to open a portal, that it happened by accident, during an experiment that pushed reality too far. Others believed the organization knew exactly what it had done and was covering it up. Skeptics demanded hard evidence. Believers shared grainy photos, mathematical formulas, and energy readings they claimed were leaked from inside the lab. None of it could be verified, but the noise only grew louder. The myth of the CERN portal refused to die because it filled a space that facts could not: the fear of the unknown. But while most of these stories relied on speculation and recycled rumors, Max Loughan's claim was different. It was not based on imagination or second-hand accounts. He spoke with data, timing, and equations. Where others guessed, he pointed. And that is what made his words impossible to ignore. The 11-minute disturbance. What Max Loughan claimed CERN awoke. According to Max Loughan's statement, everything began with an event that lasted only 11 minutes. It happened during a late experiment at CERN, one that was meant to test the limits of its new quantum AI system. At first, there was nothing unusual. The collider was running smoothly, the magnetic rings were stable, and every sensor showed normal readings. Then, at precisely 3:17 a.m. Geneva time, the data began to shift. Across several monitoring networks, the same open-source systems used by universities to track magnetic and seismic activity, minor but simultaneous disturbances appeared. Instruments across Europe, Russia, and Western Asia picked up small vibrations that did not match any natural pattern. Magnetometers registered erratic pulses, short bursts of magnetic interference that spiked and vanished in seconds. These fluctuations were too small to cause damage, yet too distinct to ignore. Their timing, as Max later noted, matched exactly with the collider's recorded energy surge. In his interpretation, the event was not a malfunction. He believed CERN's Quantum AI had done something no human could plan or predict. By continuously recalibrating both proton beams, it achieved what Max described as perfect resonance. The streams of particles, instead of colliding at random, moved in synchronized harmony. Two spirals of energy aligning so precisely that they produced a concentrated pulse at the center of the collider. To most physicists, this would sound like a data artifact. But to Max, it meant something far greater. He said the collider's resonance had disturbed the Higgs field, the invisible quantum field that gives mass to everything in the universe. He compared it to throwing a stone into a still lake. When the Higgs field rippled, even slightly, it could create zones where the laws of physics weakened, forming temporary gaps in the structure of space itself. Max claimed that during those 11 minutes, one of those ripples deepened into something extraordinary. His equations described it as a quantum bridge, a moment when two layers of reality briefly touched. He said the AI, through its calculations, had reduced the barrier between those layers, the point physicists call the vacuum boundary. For a fraction of a second, energy and information may have passed between them. In simple terms, Max believed that CERN's system had opened a microscopic portal. After that statement, the internet exploded. Forums, podcasts, and YouTube channels rushed to interpret what he meant. Some called it a misunderstanding. Others said it was the discovery of the century. But one question echoed everywhere. What if Max was right? What if CERN's experiment had done something no one could explain? As his claim spread, curiosity turned into global attention. Scientists avoided comment, and news outlets struggled to verify anything. But the silence only made people more certain that something was being hidden. It was no longer just about particles and equations. It was about fear, fascination, and the feeling that humanity had crossed an unseen line. And when the story reached one of the most listened to voices in the world, it did not fade away. It grew louder. The reaction. Heard around the world. Joe Rogan weighs in. When Max Loughan's claim about CERN's quantum AI opening a portal began spreading online, it was only a matter of time before Joe Rogan joined the conversation. His podcast, known for tackling everything from science to the supernatural, had become the global meeting point for controversy. Millions tune in not just for answers, but for curiosity, to hear strange ideas debated without being immediately dismissed. For a story like Max's, there was no bigger stage. When Rogan finally addressed it, he didn't laugh it off. He began by admitting that he had seen the viral clips and that they were hard to ignore. His tone was calm but curious. He asked the same question many were secretly thinking: could something as powerful as CERN's experiments really go further than scientists intended? He reminded listeners that technology often advances faster than our understanding of it. Nuclear power, artificial intelligence, and genetic engineering had all started as breakthroughs before their risks became clear. In his words, "We're building tools that think faster than we do. What if one of those tools looks back at us?" That comment sparked a storm. People quoted him as if he had endorsed Max's theory outright. In truth, Rogan never said CERN had opened a portal. But the way he explored the question gave it credibility in the eyes of the public. He talked about how science sometimes crosses moral or existential boundaries before anyone realizes it. He compared it to opening a door just to see what's behind it, and finding out too late that it cannot be closed again. Throughout the discussion, Rogan kept circling back to one theme: human limitation. He said scientists at CERN might not be villains or visionaries, but explorers who do not fully understand what they are touching. He mentioned the idea of unknown unknowns, the possibility that some effects of these experiments could be so unfamiliar that we wouldn't even know how to recognize them. That line struck a nerve. Viewers commented that it sounded eerily close to what Max had been warning about, that humanity could be altering reality without noticing. Rogan's co-hosts and guests added fuel to the conversation. Some dismissed the claim as internet drama, while others admitted that quantum mechanics already defied common sense. They agreed that most people do not really understand how AI or particle physics work. When you put those two together, artificial intelligence, and the deepest layers of matter. It creates a space where imagination fills the gaps left by science. The discussion turned intense when Rogan asked, "What if our instruments can measure the universe, but our minds can't comprehend what they find?" That single quote exploded across social media. Fans turned it into clips, captions, and even memes. Some wrote that Rogan had validated Max's claim. Others said he had simply expressed the fear everyone felt but couldn't articulate. Whatever the truth, his platform made the story unstoppable. Within days, the clip was trending in multiple countries. To many people, it was no longer just a teenager's wild statement. It had become a legitimate question worth asking. By the time Rogan moved on to other topics, the conversation he started was still growing. It had reached scientists, skeptics, and believers alike. The public wasn't just talking about CERN anymore. They were talking about the limits of science, the dangers of curiosity, and whether humanity might one day build something that thinks beyond its creators. And beneath all the excitement, a quiet question lingered. What if Max wasn't entirely wrong? What if CERN's technology had brushed against something beyond measurement? A force that cannot be seen, but one that has already begun to respond. The world after the portal. If Max Loughan's theory is true, then the 11-minute event was not just an experiment. It was the first moment the structure of existence itself began to move. According to him, the portal was not a hole in space, but a distortion in the foundation of physics, the invisible web of energy that holds everything together. In physics, space is not empty. It is filled with what scientists call the quantum vacuum, a sea of fluctuating energy that gives birth to all particles and forces. Every atom, star, and planet depends on its balance. If that balance changes, even slightly, everything built on it begins to shift as well. Max warned that the resonance recorded at CERN might have altered this background energy, what he called the 0 point. If the 0 point moves, so do the laws of nature. The constants that govern the universe, such as the speed of light, the pull of gravity, and the charge of an electron, are all tied to it. Even a microscopic change could rewrite how atoms form and how time flows. The world would not collapse in an instant. It would quietly drift into a new version of itself, one that looks the same on the surface, but follows different rules underneath. Such a disturbance could spread through something known as field coupling. All forces, including electromagnetic, gravitational, and quantum, are interlinked. A change in one field ripples into the others like vibration through a web. If CERN's resonance truly disturbed the Higgs field, which gives matter its mass, that ripple could now be moving outward, unseen but constant. Experiments might begin to return values that no longer match the past. Clocks might drift from perfect synchronization, and no one would notice at first because the changes would appear too small to question. Max went further. He suggested that the 11-minute resonance might have done more than distort space. It may have let information pass between realities. He called this process timeline grafting. If the quantum AI opened a temporary link between two universes, then fragments of data could have crossed over, such as energy signatures, quantum states, or even small patterns of information. He believed that some systems, like atomic clocks or entangled particles, might now contain traces of another reality.